Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Ranking the Albums. And we've got, as you can see, in the co-captain's chair in his amazing looking media room, Mr. Jamie Laszlo. What's happening, my friend?
What's
Happy
going
Sunday
on,
to you.
Pete? How you been, man?
Doing good. It's Sunday. It's dreary, raining. It's going to be like 65 here in New York, but rain and fog all day because, of course, it was like 35 yesterday. So that's kind of the weird winter we've had. But
I got a good day today. I got a Tool concert tonight. So I'm excited. I'm ready to go with this. So
yeah, Tool. So Jamie was telling me off camera that he last minute just decided to buy a ticket to the Tool concert tonight. So that's pretty neat.
yes, I've never seen them. They're getting into their 60s. They don't, they do an album every 8 to 12 years. Yeah. Who knows how many tours are left? So I better just do it.
Yeah. Probably, God, if they're going to play a lot of stuff off that new album, it's probably going to be kind of like a hypnotic type of an evening, because that album is just like kind of like you just sit and close your eyes and just kind of take you away. It's not like really like, I mean, there's songs, but they're like, I don't know. The music of Tool.
I'm hoping that that album is old enough now that they're mixing it up pretty good with all the albums.
Yeah, you would think so.
That list.
You would think so. Well, enjoy that. That'll be fun.
Yep.
But we're not here to talk about Tool today. We're actually here to talk about a band that we've actually announced that we were going to do this like weeks ago. It's just a matter of I've been the one holding it up because I'm fairly new to this band. They only have 4 records out there, a U.S. band. I guess you can kind of call them a doom band, although as you'll see as we talk about their albums, I think they bring a lot more to the table than just that. The band is called Chemis. Khemmis. They have 4 albums. Jamie's wearing the shirt right there. Originally signed to 20 Buck Spin label, right? So 20 Buck Spin, of course, a pretty cool little small underground label that features lots of doom and death metal and hardcore and that sort of thing. More avant-garde metal stuff. Of course, the label also named after the great song from legendary doom act Pentagram, but they are now signed to Nuclear Blast Records. So you should be able to, if you have a metal, a record shop or CD shop that you go to that carries Nuclear Blast stuff, you should be able to find Chemis's, I believe, last 2 albums, because I think the 3rd album also was distributed by Nuclear Blast, if I remember correctly. So 4 albums. As Jamie and I were talking before we went on air, I think all 4 albums are, if they're not equal, they're pretty close to the greatness that is carried within all of them. And for me, as someone who's new to this band, I've only just started listening to them over the last couple months in anticipation of doing this show, and based on Jamie's constant recommending them to me. I don't find much separates these albums. They're all really high quality. So for everybody watching who in the comments is going to say, well, which album should I start with? Start with any of them. Start with our number ones. It doesn't really matter. They're all really good. I got all 4 of them at the same time, and I've been listening to all 4 of them equally, and they're all really, really good. So this was excruciatingly hard trying to put an order together. So I would say for everybody watching, maybe not pay so much attention to the order that they're in, but we're going to talk about the albums pretty in depth. So this is almost like we're reviewing every album here in addition to ranking them. So with all that said, I'll have Jamie kick us off with his number 4.
All right. It's hard to say one of my favorite bands these days, because I feel like there's 2 columns in our lives. You have our favorite bands we've been listening to our whole life, right into our DNA. And then you have these favorite bands that are newer bands. And it's kind of hard to mix them in to the Black Sabbaths and Led Zeppelins of the world.
True.
So I kind of keep them separate. I got everyone knows I love Pat Benatar and Maiden and Crosby, Stills and Nash. And then over here, Chemis might be on top, with the Mastodons and everything like that. So, but people might be asking, when I listen to this band, if I listen to this band, are they going to be growling? Because, a lot of new metal bands, look, not every new metal band is going to sound like they came out in 1987. True. So if you're not down with the growling, all I can say is get over it. You're missing out on a lot of cool bands if you can't get over the growling. So that is why I have devised my Growl program. Getting readily on board while listening, awesome. Which not the best, but I dare you to come up with something better here using these. I dare you. If you come up with something better, put it down in the comments below. So my Growl 4-step program to getting over the growls. Number 1, choose a band that has clean and harsh vocals. It's like this. If you're getting on a roller coaster for the first time, you're not going to get on the one with 7 loops. If you're having hot sauce for the first time, it's not going to be the ghost pepper sauce. It's going to be Frank's Red Hot. So ease yourself into this with clean and harsh vocals. And as you're listening to it, you might go, oh, the harsh vocals. Oh, but I love the clean. And then you'll anticipate the clean and you'll listen to it over and over because you like the clean. And before you know it, those harsh vocals are growing on you and you don't mind them as much.
Which if I could stop you there for a second, this is absolutely perfect because this is exactly how I got into this stuff.
Yes.
20 years ago. And you know, the bands that I started with were bands like Amorphous and Bork Nagar and Opeth. Right?
Yes, exactly. I was going to bring those up. Yeah, I was like you, if you're not into this thing, 12, 11 years ago. And I started listening to Opeth, and that was my gateway, the harsh and the clean. Number 2, clean guitar tones. So if you're listening and you got the growling, you probably need to offset the growling with some clean guitar tones and melodies. Which brings me to number 3, strong melodies. Make sure the band you choose has strong melodies, and you might find yourself humming these tunes long after you listen to the album. And you go, you know what? That song wasn't that bad because it's stuck in my head. Let me go give that another try. And if number 1 doesn't work, and if number 2 doesn't work, and if number 3 doesn't work, last resort is number 4, alcohol. While you're listening to these bands, drink some alcohol. Maybe a little whiskey to get your blood going. And then when he starts growling, you're like, hey, that ain't that bad. And then next time you listen to him without the alcohol, you're kind of remembering the time when you did listen to him with the whiskey, and you're feeding off that in your mind, and you're like, this ain't bad at all. So that's the 4-step program.
Love it. I love it. And then it's so true though. It's
yes,
because it just brings me back, and that's because I had, you know, I remember, you know, and I listened to Death early on, but then in a lot of the 90s, I was kind of like, I'm not sure I'm into that anymore. And then, you know, of course, Cannibal Corpse and other bands kind of rose to prominence in the 90s, and I was like, oh. But then, you know, I started hearing all this talk of the bands we just spoke about before, and then you're listening to them, and you're like, oh, I love that melodic vocal. Yeah, the growl, I'm not sure. Like, oh, but I love the guitars. Oh, I love.
Yeah,
songs are just great. And then before you know it, you just start saying, hey, these vocal styles complement each other really well. And actually, I can kind of understand what they're growling, right? And it's like, because I mean, there are death metal bands that have vocalists that do these like pig grunt growly things that I still don't really care for. But then there are guys who do death growls that I'm like, that's the best guy in the world who does that, or the singers who kind of rate really high for me, even though they are growling quite a bit. And I think that this band is a perfect example of everything that you just talked about.
Yes. And if you find a band with clean and harsh vocals and you move on to other bands, maybe a little bit more growling, and then you're listening to Swedish death metal and you don't even know it. Don't even realize you made it that far.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
All right. My number 4, this was tough because my number 3 and 4 kept, and I finally decided just an hour ago, I'm going to put number 4 as the first album, 2015's Absolution. Again, there is nothing wrong with these albums, but I got to explain why it's number 4 and not 3, 2, or 1, right? The number 1 problem, quote unquote problem, because there's no real problems, is it's a solid album. There's no peaks and no valleys. Every song is kind of really good. And I like peaks. I like that one banger to be on the album. And this kind of doesn't have that one banger. So even if I got to have valleys, give me peaks, man. I'd rather have peaks and valleys than straight across the board. But it starts off torn asunder. It's kind of got, you know, they're doom metal, but they have a little bit of a gallop in their music. This is kind of doom metal that you can move to a little bit. Ash, Cinder, Smoke. You can see right away that they have a specific style. Guitar melodies, harmonies. When you hear, you know, they kind of sound like other bands, but they kind of sound like themselves too. You know, they remind me of that band Skull, the doom metal Skull, a little bit. And The Bereaved is probably the closest thing to a banger on this album, though. They love to end the albums with big epics, as a good metal album should end, big epic. And this has it starts off with, you know, guitar playing that almost everyone on this watching this channel is going to love, the guitar playing that introduces this song and throughout these albums. And it ends with big guitar solos. And when he's singing, he sounds like, you know, when he comes in singing about 2 minutes into the song, it sounds like he's on top of a mountain, bellowing out into the night, holding on to a flag or something, you know, just big, powerful shit. That's why I love this vocalist. His name is Phil Pendergast, and Ben Hutcherson does the harsh vocals. These are smart guys too, by the way. They like teach at the Colorado University of Boulder. They're teachers. I don't know if they still teach, but because how can they teach when they're on tour all the time? Kind of like Indiana Jones. They show him teaching in the movies, and you're like, how are you teaching, holding that teaching job when you're out on adventures all the time? Kind of the situation here. But yeah, I mean, it's maybe a little harsher than the other three albums, the production wise. Maybe there's harsh vocals. I don't know. But if this is where you started, this is where I started when it first came out, and it captured me, and I've been a fan since. But that's my number 4.
I'm glad you pointed out who's doing the harsh and who's doing the clean, because I kind of wasn't sure, but they're both really well done. I think so. Phil is doing the clean vocals.
Yes,
he is a really good singer.
Yes,
he kind of reminds me of a cross between Michael Ackerfeld from Opeth and Miles Kennedy from Alter Bridge, a little bit.
I can see
in
that.
between. Really good, really good. And the harsh vocals are cool because they don't stay all in one place. So if that's Ben who's doing them, he does like this kind of like gruff, like kind of early Mastodon type of thing. He can do like straight ahead death growls, kind of like, you know, Chuck Schuldiner from Death, but he does these kind of like weird, like kind of black metal type of things at times. So
like a hiss.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Growly hiss.
Yes, like it's kind of scream hiss type of thing.
And
really
most
good.
times those growls do not stay very long.
No, they don't.
Maybe 4 lines.
Yeah.
And then it's back out, and you know, it's adds spice to the song. It's not the actual song.
Right. Yeah, that is a really good point. And I want to just clarify that for everybody watching. The extreme vocals, we'll just call them that, the harsh vocals, are used sparingly on the album for effect. I don't think there's any, on any of the albums, I don't think there's any song where it's extreme or harsh vocals throughout the entire song. They're most, I would say it's what, 80-20? Clean versus harsh?
80-20 most of the time.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. So, all right. My number 3 and 4, I've changed so many times. I'm just going to kind of go with what I decided this morning because I went through the whole list again this morning. I'm going to go with their second album, number 4, called Hunted. I will say the album artwork, CD artwork, is extraordinary on all these. If you love kind of like fantasy type of thing, you know, swords and sorcery and warriors and all that kind of stuff. I mean, this is, you can't beat this stuff. I mean, just look at that. Just absolutely gorgeous. I'm sure Jamie has the vinyl on these and it will look even more impressive. But second album here, second album for 20 bucks spin, 5 songs in total. They generally don't have much more than that. Most of their songs are fairly lengthy, 5 to 10 or sometimes more. This has Above the Water, which just crushes, big riffs, and loads of twin guitar harmonies. So I'm going to stop there for a second. So you mentioned the Skull before. I think a lot of the doomy references on these albums remind me of Skull or Trouble, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
his main band, his original band, a little bit of Candlemass at times. This is not really Black Sabbath type stuff, I don't think. Maybe in spots, but for the most part, not.
More Thin Lizzy than Black Sabbath.
Well, yeah, well, that was where I was going next. And then so mix like Trouble, Candlemass, Skull type doom with Thin Lizzy, Iron Maiden style twin guitar histrionics and harmonies. Really, really interesting stuff. So yeah, so where was I here? So Candlelight, here you got some death growls on that one, used for the first time on this particular album, but it's kind of like slow, doomy, dirgy. You got 3 gates, which again, you mentioned the gallop thing. So they do that. They mix it up on these albums where they'll have like a slow funeral doom piece that still has all the twin Thin Lizzy style guitars, and then they'll kick into like a Maiden style gallop, which is really good. 3 gates is kind of like that. It's got a mix of growls and shrieks and clean vocals. Kind of sounds like Celtic Frost in spots, like early Hellhammer Celtic Frost reminds me of that, except with really, really virtuoso guitar solos, which I don't think we'd ever say that Celtic Frost had back in the day. But really nice clean vocals on this song. I love when he's, does the no salvation. It's just killer stuff. Beyond the Door, 9 minutes long, just excellent song. Maiden style arrangements mixed with the slow doom thing. The title track is like 13 minutes long, never gets boring. It's good melodic doom. I like the way they blend like the big dirgy riffs with all the twin harmony guitar parts, and the clean vocals are outstanding. Overall, very unique sounding album, lots of variety. It almost pains me to put it at number 4, but everything's got to go somewhere.
It pains me, Pete, more than it pains you.
Yeah, I'll go with, but this might be your favorite, right? Who knows, but we'll see where it happens. But I think it's great. But again, just take it with a grain of salt that I'm new to these albums over the last couple of months. So Jamie's had probably been listening to these guys since they first came out. For me, this is tough because all these albums are just about equally as good. So, like I said, don't get too hung up with my rankings here, but
it's interesting as someone who bought all 4 at once to see how they're shuffled out for you.
Yeah, it's because I don't have more history with one versus the other, right?
Right.
Usually that's what happens with fairly newish bands that have small catalogs. It's like, you may tend to rank the most recent ones lower because you don't have the history with them, or any band, I guess, that in general. But I think for me, this is more about talking in depth about the albums and why they're so good rather than where they sit on my ranking, for me anyway. So with that said, back to you for number 3.
And you said small catalog, and these albums are short too. They're like 40 to 45 minutes long.
Yeah, that's it.
So if you never heard of these guys and you want to get on board, it's not too late. It's not like it's 7 albums and each one is 80 minutes long. 4 albums, 42 minutes each. You can bang them out in the afternoon and be caught up and right on board.
Yeah, good point.
And then they'll probably break up. No, I hope not.
Let's hope not.
So, but I mean, I was listening to you describe that album, and if I wasn't a fan and never heard of them, and you're saying Thin Lizzy and all that, I'd be sold. And I really hope, because people like you, Pete, and they will watch you count down anything. I mean, you could probably count down your 5 bet movements of the week, and people go, "Wow, it's Pete. Let's tune in." And that's what I hope they're doing here. I hope they're tuning in because they like the show and like you, and they find out about this band in the process.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why we do these rankings of a lot of these newer bands, because we have a lot of folks that are in a certain age group that loved music back in the 70s and 80s, and maybe haven't listened to a lot of new stuff over the last 20, 30 years. And we were trying to change that mindset, that there have been a lot of great bands that have come out since 1990. There have. And it shows like this, if you can spend 15, 20 minutes, half hour with us talking about some of these albums, that you go and listen to them and see for yourself. Don't just say, "Oh, Chemis, I never heard of them before, I'm not going to watch this episode." Because that happens a lot, and it's a shame.
I know. And they scream rock and roll will never die. Well, if you don't start listening to newer bands, it might.
Yeah.
So got to keep the bands coming up, because the ones we love won't last forever.
Yeah.
All right. Number 3. I'm going with Deceiver from last year. I tell you what, it almost was my number 4. When I did a bad thing before I listened to this album. like 2 days before it came in my mailbox, I read a review, and the review was not that great on it. And I went into it with a bad attitude, like, oh, this is going to suck. And I probably should not have read that review, but I've shaken that review out of my head, and I've listened to this many times, and it's a good album. It has a banger on it too, but it starts off Avenel Gate, and you're like, okay, it's Chemis. It's a Chemis song. The blueprint is there. Maybe that's one of the issues I have with this album. We're 4 albums in. The blueprint was set with this. Here we are here, and it's the same blueprint. Maybe it's time to mix things up a bit, do something different. I'm not sure what that different is. That's their job to figure out. There's 2 things that's really hard to do in music, if you ask me. The most difficult thing is to create a new genre. I think you create a new genre, that's you did something pretty fantastic. Another difficult thing is give the fans what they want when they don't know they want it. So when you hear it, you're like, I had no idea I wanted Chemis to do a disco record, but now I do. I'm not saying do a disco record, I just went extreme. So maybe next time, some keyboards, or I don't know. They'll figure it out. You got Living Pyre, which is a solid. Oh, that's track number 3. House of Cadmus is 2. And here's the crazy thing. It blends in with song 1. So if you're not paying attention to the CD track numbers or your vinyl needle, you kind of think it's because they change up things so much in their songs, you just think it's a change up in the song. So if you listen to this, make sure it says track 2. But if you got the cassette, you're on your own. You don't know where this, because it happens again later in this album. I got to tell you, this is when the curse is the worst. So I already have it on CD. I already have it on vinyl. They post on my Facebook page, 200 of these were just made. So I click on it just to see the price. Only 9 left. There's only 9 left, Pete. I got to get one.
Yeah,
so I got one.
You got to be part of the crowd, right? You got to
yes,
be part
the
of that
curse
circle.
At its worst. Then Living Pyre, which is solid. Shroud of Lethe. A lot of their songs are slow, but this is the only Chemis song I know that starts off sounding like a ballad. Slow but ballady. Then it goes into its normal Chemis thing halfway through the song. Obsidian Crown. Sorry. These guys are so smart that they name their songs after words that I cannot pronounce correctly. That's when it happens again, where you think it's part of the previous song. I don't know if I like that or not, but this probably is the weakest song in the album. It has all the Chemis properties there. The playing's good, the sound is good, but it's just missing it's like those last 2 Steely Dan albums, 2 Against Nature and Everything Must Go. It sounds like Steely Dan. The playing is good. It's just something a little bit missing there, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
That's how I feel about that song. But then, so that's the valley. Then the peak comes, the last song. Fastest Chemis song ever recorded. This just rocks. It is a rock and roll metal song. It's barely doom. And there's no growling in it. It's the fastest song they did, and with 0 growling. So maybe if you're going to go out and just YouTube something, you could always start with that song.
And how about some of those little proggy and folky bits at the beginning?
Oh, yeah, there's proggy and folky bits, and the song comes down and the song comes up. And sometimes you think the song is over, but then it comes back. Sometimes you think the song is over and it bleeds into another song. And it sounds like I'm describing an album 80 minutes long. This is all crammed. All these albums have like 5 or 6 songs, and they're all 42 minutes long. So there's album homework assignment from me and Pete to all of you.
That's right. Go listen to any of these. Well, more on that one later. I'm going to go with Absolution, their debut. That's my number 3. $20 spin. Just so you know, we're not bullshitting you there. That's the track list right there. I like always like their logo too. I love the, like, you know, show the guys.
Yeah, I wish this shirt had the logo, but
Yeah, I was wondering that. I was looking at it, I'm like, no, that's not quite the same, but it kind of
No.
reminds me of the pentagram logo a little bit, but maybe that had to do with they were on 20 buck spin and that's how they
Right.
implemented them. So, but this is their debut after they put out a little EP in 2013, which was self-released. Dave Otero produces this one. Really big, massive yet melodic doom on this album. I love Torn Asunder. I mean, you've spoken about a lot of the tracks I was going to hit on. Really good opener, melodic vocals, explosive wah-wah guitar solos. I think that's one of the things on this album I think we don't get on some of the later albums. There's like a little bit of a psych edge to this album, mostly in the guitar solos, which is fine. I think they got more refined with the second album and really started hitting on that Thin Lizzy thing after this album, but there's still plenty of that on here. You got some harsh vocals on this album, but they're not really growls. So again, the extreme vocals are a little different on this particular one. Ash, Cinder, Smoke, mid-paced bruising song, totally dig that. What else we got in here? Serpentine, 8+ minutes, crushing doom, lot of fuzz, outstanding clean vocals. You got Burden of Sin, another really cool track. And then you got the atmospheric and really heavy The Bereaved, which is big monolithic doom, kind of sludgy. And then at the halfway point, it just like kind of picks up the pace and does that gallop thing. Total headbanger tune. I really like this album. It's really strong. Today I'm going with number 3. This was originally my number 4, and then I decided to move it up a little bit because I re-listened to it this morning. And it's like, like I said, I like all these almost equally, so it's really hard to do this. But that's going to be my number 3 for today. And again,
Probably the most fuzziest.
Yes, yeah. I think they're using more fuzz on this album as compared to more just distortion going forward. But this, if you're looking for, that's why I kind of threw out that psychedelic thing, because I think this album is more akin to some of these kind of like fuzzy, doomy stoner bands, right? That we've got a lot of now. Think of fuzz like kind of like Earthless uses fuzz or bands like that. Whereas I think that on the albums that come after, the nature of the riffs are a little bit different, the way they record them, and there's not as much old school analog-y fuzz like there is on this album, but more straight ahead distortion, if that makes any sense at all.
A little bit of desert rock in that album.
Slightly, yes. Yeah, slightly. Yeah, I think they were still finding their way on this debut album, but I really like it a lot. I think for what it is, it's great. So,
yep, none of them are bad. Desolation from 2018 is my number 2. So it starts off with what a 1-2 punch, man. Bloodletting and Isolation. I think these 2 songs is everything this band does great is in those 2 songs. These are doom metal party songs, to put it the best way. You don't put this album on, when you feel suicidal. You put it on during a party and it works. I promise. I've done it quite often, even though it's just me and the wife. That's our party here. Sorry. That's another thing. My wife grew up in Kenya 20 years ago. She knew nothing about this kind of music. She thought she honestly thought every rock and roller at every single concert broke their guitar at the end of every concert. So she knew nothing. Now she's got Khemmis in her phone and she's driving around Columbus, listening to Khemmis. Flesh to Nothing, another Khemmis song. It's classic for me. Just builds and builds and builds. And look, at the end, if you're not going like this, I don't want to judge, but you might not be a metal fan. I don't know. I would say side A of the 4 side A's is the best side A. Not the best side, just the best side A in the Khemmis catalog. Then side 2 comes on. You got Deceiver, maybe a little black metal-y, maybe a little too black metal-y for some. Maybe side 2 has some harsh vocals. I don't know. You got to get over it, folks. Then Maw in Time, some more harsh vocals. It almost sounds like Dark Throne at times. And maybe that bogs the second side down just a tad because side 1 was such a banger after banger. But then from Ruin comes on and they got their big epic. It starts kind of slow, but the second half of that song more than makes up for the slower part. I can't remember if there's growling in that song or not, but if there is, it lasts for a second or two.
Yeah, I don't know if there is, or yeah, you might be right. Just very fleeting.
Yeah,
Mostly.
but I mean, you got sing along parts in this album with Isolation. How could I pray for salvation when I'm the only mourner left to grieve? So yeah, it's a party album, side A, definitely.
My number 2 as well. Here's where they start hooking up with Nuclear Blast for distribution. You can kind of tell that they're spending a little bit more money on these albums too.
Yes.
This is a really good sounding album. Not that any of them aren't, but they sound really confident here. In fact, if I remember correctly, this was also around the time where they were on that big tour with Enslaved and Wolves in the Throne Room. I forget what it was called, the Decibel Tour or something like that. And you could just hear it that these guys are really hitting their stride. Bloodletting is great. Isolation is great. I love the kind of the Maiden meets Candlemass feel of that particular album. Flesh to Nothing, killer song, galloping rhythms going on there. Twin guitar, Thin Lizzy style harmonies all over this album. Love the clean vocals. You mentioned the Seer, excellent song. Got the black metal shrieks on that one, which, you know, some people may or may not like. More of Time also combines the black metal stuff and the death metal growl. So he's using kind of like a few different styles on there. And From Ruin, excellent closer, big, epic, monolithic. Yeah, this really good album, really strong album.
Yep. Look, these guys, unless they slipped into Ohio on some little tour on the first album, I don't think they did. They just never came to my neck of the woods. So last August, we went to Vegas. I would say 33% of the reason why I went to Vegas is to see them at the Psycho Vegas festival. And it was a blast. I told them.
Did they live up to expectations?
If you're not coming to me, I'm coming to you.
Did they
now
live
they're
up
coming to Cleveland next month. Of course.
Did they live up to expectations to make that big trek out there?
Yes, they did. It was great. And we were having a great time. And my wife was like, you know what the key is? While the band was playing, you got to have good hair. All the best bands have good hair. Okay. Yes. And there's YouTube footage of that show out there too, if you want to check it out. My number 1 is a very, very, very special album to me. 2016's Hunted. This is the first new release I bought on vinyl since the 70s. So this, you know, at the time in 2016, I had all my old vinyl from the 70s, maybe a couple from the 80s that just kind of got into my collection somehow. But yeah, this is the first one. And now I have over 2,000 vinyl records, and it all started right here. And I would put this album up with all the best, with your Heaven and Hells, with your Numbers of the Beast, with your Paranoids. And if you're not too burned out on Paranoid and still consider it, you know, one of the best ever. It's very special to me. That's why when you had it at number 4, I was like, Pete, number 4. But here, look at this. Number 11 on Rolling Stone's 20 Best Metal Albums of 2016. First on Desolation. 7th on Pop Matters. And 6th on Consequence of Sound's top 10 metal albums of all time. So it's in a lot of lists that year. And it deserves to be. Above the Water. Starts off with a banger right away. Love to sing along with it. I remember when this album first came out, it has a lyrics book in it. I'd sit here by myself on a Saturday night with the lyrics book, just singing along. And they got crazy smart lyrics, you know, because these guys are smart guys. Candlelight. Candlelight is the weakest song on the album, and it's a 4.5 star out of 5 star for me. If this is your weakest track on the album, then you got something magical happening for me. Three Gates. If speed is what you want, Three Gates is a faster song. Now, here's the thing, though. The vocals, the harsh vocals to the clean vocals is almost 50-50. To where they normally use the harsh vocals as the spice, in this, the clean vocals are almost the spice. But I think it's a good enough song, and the harsh vocals aren't too harsh, that I think you can deal with it for the, I don't know how long that track is, probably 4.5 minutes long. Because what you got next is side 2, which is maybe my favorite side to an album in the last 10 years. Probably my favorite side, and this is, oh God, this is probably my second favorite album in the past 10 years. You got Beyond the Gates. It starts a little slower with majestic vocals, but then, you know, it turns into doom metal you can drive fast to down the highway with the top down. All the stars aligned for them during that song, because it just doesn't get any better. Or does it? Because The Hunted, The Hunted is next, and it's the title track, and it's as good as any metal song I've ever heard. You know, like I said, Heaven and Hell or Hallowed Be Thy Name, put it right up there with all of them, because it is majestic. When I put that song on at night when the wife and I are hanging out and it starts to kick in, it's party time. It's even my wife puts down the phone and stops texting her sister for a second. Woohoo, let's go. It is as good as, it's got a galloping rhythm, it's got smooth guitar tones, it's got great vocals. And I love this guy's vocals, because you listen to some, especially older doom metal, and for me, sometimes the vocals sound hokey. That's the best word I can come up with. This guy does not sound hokey. He sounds serious without, you know, sounding hokey or cheesy. He's so good in this song. You just get lost in it, because, and then you think the song is over, and then it goes down with like pounding drums. Like, when is this going to fade out? It's going to fade out, right? It doesn't fade out. It just does it for about 2 minutes. And then it comes back to this chanting and oh, wow, 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 and you just get lost in it. And then the album's over, and it's only been 42 minutes, and you want to listen to it all again.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. It's a great album. Like I said, I think, you know, me having with more time, my ranking is sure to change a little bit. So with, you know, only listening to this band for like 2 months, it's hard to put them in any kind of order because they are so good. But I think for me, my number one, based on all of that, and it's based on a couple factors, I think. I really love the production of Deceiver from 2021. And again, artwork just absolutely spectacular. It's their first official album on Nuclear Blast. I get the impression, kind of like I said with the last album, that there is a bigger budget for their releases now. This sounds real. I mean, all these albums sound professional, but there's a little bit, and maybe that's why some people don't like this one as much. There's a little bit of a sheen to this album that I don't mind. And by sheen, I'm meaning it just sounds even more professional sounding. This is a ferocious, big sounding album. A lot of nuances going on here. A Vernal Gate has got this lovely, like, little acoustic guitar thing going on at the beginning. Kind of new for them, right? And then the bombast kicks in, kind of faster paced doom, explosive lead guitars. Love the vocals. This guy is a killer singer. Really, really great singer. House of Cadmus got more of like kind of like a funeral doom thing happening on there. Emotional vocals, right? But it's still like a heavy song, even though it's a little slower, more melancholy type of thing. But we're not talking like My Dying Bride melancholy, right? And we're not talking really Candlemass type of melancholy, because I think that's one of the things, you know, I've spoken to people over the years about Candlemass who, you know, especially Messiah Marcolin, their classic singer, he doesn't sing for them anymore. Some people love him, some people don't like him, right? This guy always sounds really, really strong and really, really excellent. Living Pyre, lots of different guitar textures and riffs, those Thin Lizzy guitars all over the place. Clean and harsh vocals, really mixing up really well on that. You mentioned the Shroud of Lethe or however they say it. I don't know. To me, sounds like Blackwater Park Opeth, with the clean guitars, then mixing up with the thunderous stuff. You got these atmospheric sections, you got the clean and growling vocals. Amazing, Really, really amazing. And what else? Obsidian Crown, Real Doomy, Astral Road is just absolutely killer. I don't know. It's, to me, there's not a weak point of this album, and I really dig it a lot. And like you mentioned, the Astral Road is the big banger on the album, and it's an epic that I urge anybody to go out and listen to, because it has a little bit of everything that makes this band so cool. And if you are an Opeth fan, I think you'll like it, because I love the way the song constantly shifts and takes you to different places. And you got the galloping stuff, like the Maiden stuff, new wave of British heavy metal. You've got the doomy sections, you got these little prog and folk passages, and really, really good. But the whole thing is really, really melodic, yet really heavy. So yeah, I'm going with this as my number one. Any of these can be number one, though, really.
Right.
I think that's the key. So
man, I hope people watched this video and learned about this. Maybe we need to maybe make the thumbnail of us just laughing hysterically, and people will go, why are they laughing? What are they laughing at?
Watch
it. Just go, and then people be like, what is going on there? And then they find out about the band. Real quick, they have this split 45 with Spirit Adrift and Chemis. They have a song on here called Conversation with Death. That's pretty good. Then, you get Decibel Magazine, and sometimes they have those flexi discs in there. This was the only way to get the song at the time, Empty Throne. So I bought the magazine just for the flexi disc. But then they released this EP that has both those songs on it, called Doomed Heavy Metal. And they have on here a fantastic version of Rainbow in the Dark, which you've got to hear if you haven't heard it. Has those two songs, and then the second side is 3 live tracks. And they have an EP that came out before all this with a very rough sound version of the Bereaved on it, and some other songs. You can only download that. And then there is this various artists album out, Dirt Redo. It's Alice in Chains' Dirt song for song redone by, each song is redone by a different band, and they do a very good version of Down in a Hole. So nice, check it all out, guys. It's not too late to get on board.
There you go. As we speak, 500 people are going to be going on YouTube and listening to Rainbow in the Dark by Khemmis. Guarantee it.
Oh, yes, because they know that song. Oh, I know that song. Oh, hey, if that's what it takes to start the rabbit hole, then hell with it. Yeah, go for it.
That's what it takes, and that's what it takes. So yeah. Khemmis, only 4 albums, full length. Go check them out. Like Jimmy said, they're about 40, 42 minutes each. Not really long, 5-6 songs per album. Crushing doom, new wave of British heavy metal type stuff. Loads of twin guitar harmonies if you love Thin Lizzy and Maiden and Wishbone Ash, that type of thing. Occasional nods to Opeth. Yeah. Great stuff. I'm really happy that I checked out this band, because even an old fart like me can learn about some new music every so often, right? So
right, old farts like us.
Well, you know what it is. I mean, I try to listen to as much of these new bands as I possibly can, but it's like sometimes you just,
I know, and you want to hold on to your classics that you love, and you got to find room for the new stuff, and you got your movies, and yeah, I know.
Yeah. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, I don't recall that I ever had to review any of their albums, but it's really funny, because we have been reviewing 20 Buck Spin stuff for ages, and certainly Nuclear Blast, we cover almost everything that they've ever done. So for whatever reason, I've never myself personally said, okay, I'm going to review that. Usually someone else gets it, and I guess that's what it is. But I always have heard the name, but it wasn't really until you started really talking to me about them that I'm like, all right, I like everything. What it sounds like is everything that I like. So let me just go investigate. And I just went and ordered all 4 of them, and I'm glad.
I try not to be too pushy with the bands I like, just pushy enough, not irritating, but determined.
Yeah, well, nothing wrong with that. It's kind of like like another ranking show that we're going to be doing fairly soon here on the channel, the Tea Party from Canada. So again, a band that I'd heard about many years, never listened to them at all. And between Armando, Rick, and Martin, they've got me to check out the whole catalog, and the 4 of us are going to be doing a ranking show sometime later this month. So
I bought my first Tea Party album about 5 months ago. 4 months.
Yeah, good, really good band, right? Yeah, really good band. And I do want to let everybody know, because I'm sure it'll come up. We have not forgotten. We are going to be ranking the catalog of the Cult. That is happening. I actually, because
so they say.
So they say. Yeah, well, we got to get Chris Allo on the schedule. That's the whole thing. Chris is a busy guy, so we got to get him on the schedule. But I'm ready. I'm pretty much ready to go with mine. So, but that's a band that I was on board with early on back in the 80s and the early 90s, and then I just kind of fell out of touch with, because that happens sometimes. And so I had to get caught up on all of the more recent stuff from them. But it was good revisiting the early albums, because I hadn't heard them in a million years. So, but that's coming up, everybody. So we'll get that on the schedule soon and deliver that to you. But in the meantime, visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Make sure you check out the 4-step program that Jamie has mentioned there. Jamie, you want to get that fully on? Yeah, there we go. So the Growl 4-step program: clean and harsh vocals, clean guitar tones, strong melodies, and fill it up.
Maybe practice this on the weekend, just in case you got to get to step number 4.
There you go. Yes. But this is a perfect band to, and we mentioned a few of them. So for me, my train of thought has always been Opeth, Amorphous, and Borknagar, because I think they kind of do it the best. But you can add Chemis to that, because they fit right in. And again, it's probably 75-80% clean vocals, and the clean vocals are incredible. Yes. So there you have it, everybody. I think we've already told you where to visit. Did I not? Yeah.
Yes, we've gone through it, Pete.
I can never remember. I think I got the.
I know.
So thanks for watching, everybody. Tune in. We got 2 album rankings for you today. Rick Labonte is joining me momentarily, and we will be ranking the catalog of the Neil Morse Band. So that is actually coming up in a little bit. So please make sure to check in to that as well. And again, only 4 albums on that end. So it's a pretty easy ranking day for us. So for Jamie Laszlo, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you tomorrow on the Hudson Valley Squares. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.